What if I told you a sitting US president landed in the Middle East and was treated not like a politician, but like a monarch? Fighter jets in diamond formation, gold-draped palaces, a custom Boeing 747 gifted like a royal token. No, this isn't a scene from a Netflix political thriller. It's exactly what happened to Donald Trump in 2025. On May 13th, under the unforgiving Saudi sun, Air Force One descended onto Riyadh's runway. But instead of a red carpet, something else stretched beneath Trump's feet, a lavender one. A lavender one. To most Americans, it looked like a color choice. But to the Saudis, lavender is sacred. It symbolizes strength, resilience, generosity, and most importantly, royalty. Trump wasn't just a guest, he was being crowned, and that was only the beginning. What followed was a $3.2 trillion storm of deals across Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. Defense contracts bigger than any in US history, AI infrastructure plans dwarfing Silicon Valley, and a diplomatic pageant so opulent it made Buckingham Palace look like a budget hotel. But here's the twist. Buried beneath the gold and fireworks were legal gray zones, controversial gifts, and a new kind of American foreign policy, one driven not by military boots, but by luxury jets and economic seduction. And if you think it was just about business, wait until you hear what happened in the final hours of the trip. A single gesture between Trump and MBS that said more than any treaty ever could. Stay until minute 14. The truth behind that final moment may change how you see US diplomacy forever. It wasn't Trump's first trip to Saudi Arabia, but this one was unlike anything the world had ever seen. As Air Force One touched down at King Khalid International Airport, 4 F-15 fighter jets soared overhead, trailing vapor like crown jewels in the sky. But all eyes were on the tarmac, not because of the motorcade or the press, but because of the carpet. Instead of the traditional red, a regal lavender carpet stretched from the stairs of Air Force One all the way to the motorcade. Lavender, not just aesthetically rare, but culturally profound. In 2021, Saudi Arabia made it the official color for all royal receptions. It symbolizes wild desert flowers that bloom every spring, flowers known for surviving the harshest climates, just like the kingdom itself. The carpet Trump walked on, hand-woven by Bedouin women, using techniques passed down for centuries. Each border stitch was a symbol of tribal legacy, national pride, and intentionally or not, a quiet claim of honor. You are one of us. Then came the crown prince. Mohammed bin Salman, dressed in a bisht lined with gold, stood waiting at the end of the lavender path. No words, no podiums, just a traditional gesture, offering Arabic coffee from a golden dallah. In Arab culture, it's not just hospitality. It's a right reserved for leaders, elders, and kings. Trump accepted the cup, nodded slightly, and smiled. Cameras flashed. The symbolism was complete. From there, a fleet of black Bentleys whisked them to Al Yamama Palace, past fountains, palm-lined roads, and a line of Saudi troops in crisp white uniforms. But the palace itself? Think Versailles with a desert twist. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars, marble floors polished to mirror shine, and a meeting room that looked less like diplomacy and more like destiny. Trump was no longer the deal-maker-in-chief. For one day, in the heart of the Gulf, he was treated as something more. A king. But how did this spectacle set the stage for a trillion-dollar storm? That's where the real story begins. Inside Al Yamama Palace, the chandeliers weren't the only things glittering. Sitting across from Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Donald Trump wasn't flipping through foreign policy briefs. He was signing contracts, massive ones. The headline, a $600 billion mega deal. On paper, it looked like a conventional alliance, military hardware, energy projects, and tech collaboration. But the details told a different story. $142 billion of that went to cutting-edge US weapons, from stealth fighters to missile defense systems. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Wall Street lit up within hours. And then came the oil. Saudi Aramco pledged $50 billion toward energy infrastructure in the United States, including new refineries, pipelines, and clean energy labs. It wasn't just about oil anymore. It was about reshaping the energy balance of power. The real stunner? A $100 billion investment from the Public Investment Fund into US tech, real estate, and AI. This wasn't just money changing hands. It was influence, direct financial stake in America's future industries. Trump, never shy on stage, called it the biggest deal ever signed in U.S. diplomatic history. He even hinted the total could hit $1 trillion over time, creating 2 million American jobs. Fact-checked or not, it was a soundbite made for headlines, but not everyone was clapping. Back in Washington, murmurs turned into protests. Critics slammed the administration for selling weapons to a regime with a questionable human rights record. Others pointed to potential conflicts of interest, especially with the rumored involvement of private Trump-linked firms as consultants on the deal. The press dubbed it the deal of the century. Supporters saw economic genius. Opponents smelled something darker, a foreign entanglement with a golden smile. But for Saudi Arabia, it wasn't about politics. It was about optics and legacy. By casting Trump in gold and lavenders, they weren't just honoring a guest, they were rewriting their image on the global stage. And Riyadh was just the beginning. Because next, Trump heads to Qatar, and what happens there turns legal boundaries into diplomatic theater. If Riyadh was majestic, then Doha was decadent. When Air Force One landed at Hamad International Airport, it wasn't just another diplomatic stop, it was a full-blown royal pageant. Waiting at the bottom of a long red carpet stood Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, draped in full ceremonial regalia. No words, just presence, and dozens of high-definition cameras capturing every second. But the real drama began behind closed doors. Inside the Emiri Diwan Palace, under golden domes and velvet curtains, a single object stole the show. A brand-new, customized Boeing 747, valued at $400 million, fully retrofitted as a flying palace. Gold sinks, silk upholstery, AI-controlled cabin settings, and at its center, a private presidential suite that made Air Force One look dated. The Emir leaned in with a smile. "A gift," he said. Trump, unfazed, grinned. Only a fool would say no. And that's when Washington erupted. Under the U.S. Constitution's Emoluments Clause, a sitting president cannot legally accept gifts from foreign states without congressional approval. Legal scholars scrambled. Ethics watchdogs filed injunctions. Even late-night talk shows lit up. Is Trump flying Air Force Qatari now? The White House fired back, arguing that accepting the aircraft would save taxpayer money by reducing presidential travel expenses in the long term. It was spin, but it worked. For his base, Trump wasn't breaking rules. He was playing 5D chess. Meanwhile, the deals kept rolling in. Qatar Airways signed a $96 billion contract to purchase 160 Boeing aircraft, 787 Dreamliners and the new 77X models. Over 150,000 U.S. jobs were projected across aerospace hubs like Wichita, Charleston, and Everett. For the cameras, it was about aircraft and handshakes. But for insiders, it was about power, the kind you can't see. Gifting a flying fortress isn't diplomacy, it's dominance. And Trump, he didn't just accept the plane, he accepted the message. You're not just a visitor, you're a king of capital. But the real climax was yet to come. Because in Abu Dhabi, a $1.4 trillion shockwave was waiting, and even Trump's inner circle didn't see it coming. If Riyadh crowned Trump and Doha honored him, then Abu Dhabi nearly deified him. On May 15, 2025, Air Force One descended onto the tarmac of Abu Dhabi International Airport. But this landing felt different. 6 Mirage 2000 fighter jets cut through the desert sky, flanking the presidential aircraft in a show of martial precision. On the runway stood President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, architect of the UAE's rise from oil-rich outpost to global innovation hub. And he wasn't here to make small talk. As Trump stepped off the plane, a cultural performance exploded to life. The Ayala sword dance, dozens of men in white robes swaying in sync, sabers raised, drums pounding, women in flowing dresses joining in. Not just spectacle, symbolism. The Emirates were showing the world that tradition and tech could coexist, and they wanted Trump to be part of that legacy. But nothing prepared his team for what came next. Inside the opulent Qasr Al Watan Palace, under marble arches and golden domes, Sheikh Mohammed unveiled what he called a generational alliance. The UAE would invest a jaw-dropping $1.4 trillion into the United States over the next decade. $500 billion would go to the Stargate project, a futuristic AI infrastructure initiative backed by SoftBank, OpenAI, Oracle, and Z Corporation. Another $60 billion earmarked for liquefied natural gas production in Texas, and a $4.5 billion aviation deal for Boeing 787s and the next-gen 777X. It wasn't just money, it was ambition, flowing directly from the Gulf into the American heartland. And Trump? He didn't just applaud, he attacked U.S. policy. Why are we restricting AI chips to allies who buy our F-35s? He asked. You trust them with fighter jets, but not algorithms. The comment sent shockwaves through Capitol Hill. It wasn't just foreign money anymore. It was policy direction, dictated from marble palaces thousands of miles away. Trump's allies called it strategic genius. His critics saw it as dangerous dependence. But either way, the power dynamic had shifted, and it all led to one final moment. One quiet exchange that said everything, without saying a word. And that's where we go next. After 3 days of trillion-dollar deals, royal honors, and orchestrated grandeur, Donald Trump was preparing to depart the Gulf. But the most powerful moment didn't happen inside a palace or across a signing table. It happened on the runway, under the desert sun, in complete silence. As Air Force One idled, its engines humming low, Trump climbed the staircase slowly. The lavender carpet beneath him had returned, not for show, but for closure. In Saudi Arabia, lavender isn't decoration, it's declaration. A sign that someone is more than welcomed. They're embraced, elevated, almost sanctified. Halfway up the stairs, Trump did something unexpected. He paused. Then he turned. Facing the group of dignitaries, most importantly, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Trump raised his right fist. Not a wave, not a salute, a fist. Closed, confident, commanding. MBS didn't hesitate. He placed his right hand over his heart. No words, no microphones. Just a silent exchange between two leaders who understood what had just transpired. To Western eyes, it looked ceremonial. To Arab tradition, it was profound. Placing one's hand over the heart is the highest form of nonverbal respect. It says, I see you, I honor you, I trust you. It's used rarely, at funerals, in sacred moments, and when one acknowledges not just power, but kinship. That was the message. Trump hadn't just toured the Middle East. He'd been absorbed into it, not as a spectator, but as a symbolic sovereign of a new economic alliance. One built not on military bases, but mutual wealth. Not on boots, but on blockchain. AI, energy, the cameras rolled, the engines roared. And as Air Force One ascended into the sky, the moment lingered, not loud, but loaded. It wasn't a goodbye, it was a coronation, completed. Trump's whirlwind tour through the Gulf wasn't just a spectacle. It was a shift, subtle, strategic, and seismic. In just 72 hours, over $3.2 trillion in deals were secured. No invasions, no sanctions, no boots on foreign soil. Instead, economic gravity pulled the Middle East closer to Washington, not through force, but through fortune. For decades, America's power abroad meant military dominance, aircraft carriers, drone strikes, oil wars. But this was different. This was diplomacy in designer suits. Strategy wrapped in gold leaf, where AI infrastructure replaced airstrikes, where lavender carpets mattered more than camouflage. And Donald Trump, whether you admire him or despise him, became the face of that transformation. To some, he sold America's soul for Arab money. To others, he redefined the art of the deal on a global scale. But here's what's undeniable. When Trump raised his fist and MBS placed his hand over his heart, it wasn't about politics, it was about power, a new kind, quieter, stickier, long-term. So ask yourself, was this a turning point for U.S. foreign influence, or just political theater dressed in royal disguise? And more importantly, should future presidents follow this model of economic seduction, or return to traditional strategies of military dominance?